Homosexuals, transvestites, transsexuals, infantilists, pederasts, feminists, known petite drug users, computer hackers of all ages, members of any non-Western or non-Christian cults were slated for the disposal facilities under construction. Known Asian, Latino, Black and Jewish radicals had their FBI dossiers tagged with black flags to indicate that they would make a one-way trip to the ovens as soon as the facilities were ready. The senator from Utah was most insistent that the Mormon population be left alone. After an intensive review of the religious group's history of patriotism, it was reluctantly decided to allow the Mormons to continue to exist if their missionary work was completely quashed by federal fiat. Liberals and leftist pinkos were to be forcibly re-educated in concentration camps, after which they would be released. The government psychologists promised that once they had been psychologically treated, the former liberals would be unable to resist any authority figure for the rest of their lives. Secret government computers had been compiling lists of target subjects for years. The NSA, National Security Agency, had maintained lists of problem citizens since the Internet's inception and had devoted huge resources to ferreting out the enemies of democracy. The government knew where everyone lived and what they thought. Since the 1960s, even the U.S. Army had been involved in the subversion of democracy. The Fifth Army's intelligence server, situated in the southwest corner of the old limestone-walled fortress of the Quadrangle of Fort Sam Houston, had been amassing incriminating data on American citizens slated to die or be re-educated under a new regime. The Army's server collected data on those citizen individuals who had publicly disagreed at any time with the government's position on anything and thus made themselves suspect as traitors to the absolute rule of federalism. The Army's intelligence department had secretly studied the public and had infiltrated most political organizations, including both ruling parties. Since their activities were both illegal under civil law and forbidden by military law, the intelligence operations were kept secret from both the public and congressional oversight committees. When the time came, a single long night of knives would be all that was necessary to remove the elements of society which harbored criminal thoughts against the government or its policies. Convict rapists and pederasts, as well as the criminally insane and mental incompetents without familial support, i.e., those unfortunates who were under state care, would be transported by the fastest means possible to the nearest disposal area, where they would be gassed and incinerated immediately. Unlike Hitler's inefficient, bribe-ridden government, the Federalist bureaucracy determined it could vanish the unproductive population without a single trace or clue within weeks. When the armed forces went unpaid because of the revenue problems caused by the IRS's and Congress's lack of diligence, national incidents of ghastly terrorism by high explosives increased by 3 orders of magnitude. America exploded in an orgy of bombs that were carefully placed by the opposition to cripple the government while causing the least number of civilian casualties. The infamous bombing in Oklahoma City had taught the American resistance movement a valuable lesson. Civilians were to be left strictly alone. The resistance had learned that they could do as they pleased as long as the public at large was left to live its life unmolested. When IRS agents were kidnapped during the 1980s and abandoned in the Texas desert along the Mexican border to wander naked and barefoot while their IRS pickup burned, the people of South Texas chuckled in quiet glee. As far as the people of San Antonio were concerned, the 2 agents had been subjected to a well-deserved lesson in humility to which no one objected. The perpetrators of the so-called crime were never identified. After a time, the hurrah over the kidnapping died down and the infamous acts of the IRS in San Antonio continued unabated. As far as the American citizens as a whole in the year 2000 were concerned, it was well past time for another lesson in bureaucratic humility. A limited analysis of random samples of the residues of the explosives revealed that munitions produced for the armed forces were being employed against the government. The National Guard was called out to protect IRS workers, but as the workers went home they were followed and individually slain in an orgy of outrage. It took 5 years and $20 billion for the government to upgrade its computer systems. By that time, the American public had lost all respect for the federal government and saw the IRS for the enemy it truly was. Without the IRS, the government could not fund its most evil functions. When an IRS auditor came for a visit, most small business opened their books fully and let the agent assess the toll. When the agent left the office and walked out the door, the owner frequently followed him down the street with a sawed-off, double-barreled shotgun under his or her business jacket. More often than not, the small business owner simply pulled out the shotgun and squeezed both triggers to loose both barrels as the IRS agent reached his car and blew the IRS bastard in twain. Then the owner would quietly pick up the agent's briefcase and remove it from the scene for disposal before the police arrived. Public anger being what it was, the FBI rarely found anyone who would testify against the murderer, and the shooting was put down as a gang-related drive-by shooting. Deaths of IRS agents mounted. For the first time, unscrupulous IRS auditors were being shot in the back faster than they could be replaced. After all, how many misanthropic, ethics-free accountants were available in the labor market? The IRS seriously considered hiring ex-cons with a history of bilking the public, but the idea was nixed due to the retraining costs involved in changing a conscienceless con man into a loyal member of the government's Internal Revenue Service. The CIA had developed a technique during the Cold War that could regress anyone's personality to a mental age where loyalties could be induced or changed. Unfortunately, many of the individuals who were subjected to the technique became infantile and became incontinent of both bladder and bowel, as well as developing a tendency to suck their thumbs in moments of stress. The idea of sending out diapered agents was abhorrent to the IRS, and the thought of having agents start sucking their thumbs while arguing with a delinquent citizen sent shivers up the spines of the IRS's management. The only recourse was, of course, retraining, but the process of rebuilding the resulting infantile personality needed long and arduous psychological counseling and reprogramming before that person could function minimally as an adult again. In the end, they decided that it was too expensive and dropped the idea, however attractive it seemed on the surface.